I'm going to bring this home to Trinidad in just a moment, but why? The reason I ask that is to find out we have had these things come up before. Wealthy people have been exposed many times. Why, Rishi Maharaj, would this time be different?
I think it's probably going to be different because of the extent of the leaks, the powerful people that are being named, and the fact that it's now slowly coming out that there's a lot of money out there that could be now used or utilized to do a lot of good. I mean, $25 trillion, how much hospitals could that build? How much roads or facilities could that build in Africa, in India, in Asia, even in the European countries that are going through their own problems? I mean, if you didn't have these kind of instances, then maybe Greece would not have gone into turmoil. You probably would not have had the collapse of 2008.
Or maybe for what we're seeing happening with some leaders because of the ability to put that money there, Greece is in trouble, but that's a whole different talk show.
Yeah, I know, but again, I mean, these money could have been utilized elsewhere. Coming here talking about the revenue that government and that the world will have lost that could have been used to help people. So it raises that, and because of this, I guess also because of the time we were in now, information age, a lot of questions are now going to be asked, and a lot of people are now going to be coming out and poking questions at your individual leaders. You're probably going to have the proper right environment for us to try to inflict change. I mean, we saw close to 10 or 12,000 people gathered in Iceland to call for the head of the Icelandic Prime Minister. We're now seeing movements in the UK questioning the current Prime Minister, David Cameron, with regards to his father. And now I think I saw something this morning with regards to his mother, who gave him a £200,000 gift, and questions about that. So you're now having people coming out and questioning and asking what's going on, why is this happening?
It's all over the world.
Why did you allow this to happen? So I think that the
Italy's looking at the same situation.
Italy,
all over the
and now
world,
we have questions of a new president who was just elected in Argentina. You know, on a ticket of trying to be this economic savior for Argentina. And his name has apparently also been called in documents. So we're seeing a lot of things now slowly bounding and adding up. And because it's so wide scale, I think it's something that you can now hide from anymore.
This one is different. Listeners, in case you just logged into us, we're talking about the Panama Papers. You realize that we started by throwing the fish hook as far as possible to what's happening in the world, and we're going to see how that reverberates down to our region. So let's start getting closer and closer to Trinidad and Tobago. And before we stop in the unitary state, let us look at the umbrella body, which is CARICOM. CARICOM is very afraid that as a result of these disclosures, greater scrutiny will be forced on them because they are labeled, and they will be getting that label that they objected to many times before, of being tax havens. The region, the CARICOM community yesterday issued a statement saying they are deeply concerned that the loose attribution of this label of tax haven ignores the reality that the regulation of this sector in the Caribbean is fully compliant with international standards. Now, so that is a consequence before we get to Trinidad and Tobago. How you see this being adverse to the region and its banking integrity?
Well, I think CARICOM's main point that they're trying to make it relates to the fact that if they're now labeled as a facilitator of money laundering or facilitator of engaging in illicit activities, then it could have some serious economic effects on them with regards to sanctions by these European countries with regards to not playing by the rules. So I think CARICOM is also trying to walk a fine line, because at the end of the day, the facilities that some CARICOM countries offer to allow these things to happen also generates monetary finances for these CARICOM countries to be able to do their work. So they need to walk a fine line, because I guess they don't want to discredit people from coming to utilize their countries.
I want you to stop right there, because I'm trying to take our listeners as we walk through this. What I should have asked you earlier is, we see why companies would benefit from setting up shell companies and not paying taxes in the jurisdiction that they work. The question is, what is the incentive for the countries that would allow this banking situation? And I think that is what you're addressing now. Yeah. So when you say the countries benefit, how? Are they taxing this money?
So, okay, let me give you an example. Yes. The U.S. corporation tax about 35% of your gross income. And then a lot of these countries have, some don't have corporation taxes. So some countries don't pay taxes, like the Isle of Man. Other countries, you will tax you at a lower rate, maybe 5 or 6 or 7%. So you get taxed at a lower rate. So a lot of these companies would probably set up shop in these places so that they pay a lower tax and still allow them to enjoy most of the profits that they would have made. So the country would, of course, get some revenue from it with regards to taxation dollars. And then here we're talking about U.S. currency and not their own local currency. So there is some form of revenue generation that some of these things offer to CARICOM countries. But then there's also the other balancing line of it, in that sometimes you may facilitate corrupt activities. You may facilitate drug traders. You may facilitate arms dealers in utilizing your services to be able to funnel money through your country to another place. And then, of course, the detriment effects of those things. So because of that, if you want your label as being a contributor to that by the powers that be, the World Trade Organization, the European Union, or the US, then there are obvious sanctions that they can place upon you. And those sanctions obviously can hurt you a lot more. So there's a balancing act that I guess CARICOM wants to play. They don't want to be labeled as tax haven facilitating. But that, again, that's what the statements say, that we comply with the standards that exist. So we do comply with standards that exist. And there are standards that exist. But again, it's a fine line that they want to tread.
We're on our way down to Trinidad and Tobago. Just before that, we were talking about the Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Brown. He's leading the Caribbean delegation for discussion with the United States, for example, because he said there is a threat of the withdrawal of correspondent banking services that could destroy the region's financial sector. So this is the regional impact we are talking about. You see this because of all else that you have made clear to us this morning, that there are many other countries all over the world complicit in this, and the Panama Papers is just but a part of what we're dealing with. You see this as a serious threat to the region? As far as the scrutiny that will be exacted on the region by the monitoring institutions?
I'll see it being a major detriment to the region because, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there are other countries that play a part in this. I mean, even the U.S. itself, being such a high standard bearer of ethics and with regards to the way they deal with monetary policy, have their own tax haven in the state of Delaware. In the state of Delaware, they have there's a particular. I remember watching a CNN program, or either CNN or BBC during this week, where they were again looking at this whole ideas of tax havens, and they went to this particular building in Delaware, where over 3,000 companies are registered, have their address in that particular building.
Obviously.
One building.
3,000.
About 3,000 companies are registered.
Lord,
So the state of Delaware has its own particular tax haven. If you look at the UK, the Isle of Man, Jersey. If you look at Europe, you have Luxembourg, you have Switzerland, even Monaco, for example, offer some sort of tax protection. So it's not a Caribbean problem. It's a worldwide problem. A lot of countries have within their particular jurisdiction these tax haven avenues. So to say that it will impact, it may have some embarrassment on the Caribbean, but from an economic standpoint, I don't see it having a major impact because we're not the only one that play this game.
Rishi Maharaj is my guest. He's the CEO of Disclosure today. I'm smiling because I've been told all my life to obey the golden rule, and then on the other side I hear those with the goal make the rules. Anyway, so I am a jaded Trinbagonian. Trinbagonians will ask the question, Rishi, why should we care about this?
I think we need to care about this because it goes to the whole question of transparency and accountability and what actually goes on, where this actual money is generated. I mean, we've heard in our own news media outlets with regards to individuals in our own country being named in these Panama leaked papers, some of it dealing with companies, dealing with contracts that would have been awarded. So when you come to those particular areas, there's a possibility of misappropriation of public funds through using these shell companies, if you want, for want of a better word, to be able to funnel money, to be able to breach procurement processes and procedures, and then it has an impact on you in the long term. So there needs to be some sort of concern.
Precisely why.
There needs to be some sort of concern with the populace with regards to these papers.
Precisely why I asked you earlier, if your name is mentioned among those in the Panama documents, does that mean that more than likely you are doing something illegal? Because painting a broad brush with names coming out of something like this raises the question, so wait a minute, is this an illegal operation on all the components mentioned in this in some way or the other is tainted, or we can have folks who were doing legitimate business in this offshore banking situation that occurred with this bank in Panama?
It goes both ways. Some people may have used it for legal purposes. Some people may not. But because of the climate and the way the information is being leaked out and the stories that are being generated, it tends to paint a tainted brush on anyone whose name is called. So because of that, I think the government needs to really take proactive action and do proper due diligence and investigation to ensure that if any Trinidadian individual, citizen, or any Trinidadian company, organizations are named, or any contract that the government may have been gotten into in terms of those companies and their names have been called, I think proper due diligence and investigation needs to be done by the powers that be, either through the Ministry of the Attorney General, through the Police Service, or through the DPP, or even through the Integrity Commission, to ensure that whatever link there is Trinidad and Tobago, that we are in the clear and that proper legal, everything was done properly. If anything was done improperly, then proper sanctions take place.
One of the positions taken by your organization and others is this question of transparency. It comes up too because in the case of the individual named here, one individual named, it involves a government contract and the movement of money from one place to the other. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that because that is still out there. Let's leave that alone but deal with the bigger picture. In this case, would procurement legislation be the avenue that we use to ensure any monetary movement, any transactions are in fact transparent to everybody? Are you comfortable, you and your organization, comfortable that the existing laws provide sufficient sunlight on such banking and or money movement transactions in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, from our organization point of view, I think proper procurement adherence is important. We totally support the new procurement legislation that was passed, and really look forward to its implementation because we think that's one avenue through which proper due diligence could be done to ensure that monies are allocated properly. And then you also have to ensure that your other institutions that you have in place to assist in these matters are also functioning properly. For example, we have the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit.
Yes.
And the FIU's main goal or purpose would be to ensure that whatever unique transactions, and I use the word unique in inverted commas, are flagged through our banking system, that proper investigations are done to ensure whatever it is done properly and above board. So I think together, procurement legislation is one thing that's important. That's something we've always advocated for at Disclosure Today. Proper contracting information being disclosed by government. One project we're working on right now is to try to develop an open contracting portal so that information on contracts awarded by state entities and the government are now in the public domain, so people can understand exactly what your tender rules are, what your contracting procurement policies are, and to ensure that you adhere to them, and to ensure whatever contracts you would have given out, the value of those contracts and individuals are done the proper way. So procurement is one thing that we can look at, but then there are other things that also work together with procurement. I think the FIU is important to monitor our banking sector, because if the allegations are true, whether or not we don't know, it obviously would involve monies being passing through our banking service to go to other territories and to other countries. And was these things flagged? We don't know. And then, of course, you must also have a proper functioning integrity body, be the Integrity Commission in its current form or whatever amendments are made, to work hand in hand to ensure that we have a proper environment so that we can limit or that we can really squeeze people who want to engage in these type of activities.
It is 30 minutes after 10 o'clock, reminding you that we'll be dealing with our prison system very shortly, and that will be followed by the revised budget delivered by the Minister of Finance in our second hour. We are talking to Rishi Maharaj of Disclosure Today, and we're talking about the question of offshore banking. These things happening internationally. One, do you think it will force Trinidad and Tobago to treat with a greater sense of urgency the issue of offshore banking, or are you comfortable that we have sufficient legislation and resolve to dealing with that right now?
Technology is always moving 2 steps ahead, and the way these organizations and individuals will operate to try to evade taxes and to evade the money that they make, it's always going to be evolving. So you always need to be one step of the game. I think we need to really look at our taxation laws as they currently are. We need to look at the proper infrastructure that we have in place and ensure. I'm not a tax expert, so I'm not totally familiar with how taxation laws are in place, but I think we really need to ensure that whatever taxation laws we have in place in terms of our Board of Inland Revenue in terms of our VAT office, in terms of our banking sector and the regulator for the banking service and for our financial service on the whole, that these things are strengthened properly to ensure that whatever people may try to do, we're able to catch them beforehand.